Hello and welcome to Black Eye, the podcast where I share my perspective on life through my eyes. Hi guys, welcome to episode 5 of Black Eye, the podcast. I couldn't remember. This week, the topic is going to be, or I should say this episode is called Letter to My Younger Self. Hi guys, thanks for listening again. Hope everyone's had a good week. My week has been, it's been an interesting one. Very busy, lots of introspection. I've come to some important realizations that I will hopefully in 6 months' time be able to pinpoint one of the days this week as a moment in my life that defined me changing things, which is interesting, but I'm not going to talk about it too much now because I don't like to jinx things. But interesting developments and decisions that I'm kind of like hoping will bring more positivity in the creative side of my life. But other than that, it's been a pretty standard week. Chilled today, had some friends inside, took Doji for a walk, and now I'm currently roasting a chicken. And so my alarm's going to go off at some point. I have to go and take it out of the oven in 20 minutes, but if you hear a beep, that's why. But today's episode is one that was actually recommended to me by listeners, so thank you very much for that. And I thought it's such a great topic. As an adult now, technically, and not even technically, as an actual adult, thinking about if I could write a letter to myself, and I have 5. I'll try and see if I can get through all 5, but I'll try and hit 3, and then if I have time, I'll go for the other 2. But I thought about 3 things I wanted to say to my younger self now, looking back as someone who's got a bit more experience under my belt in terms of just life generally. Because I think as a kid, I think generally at any stage in your life, you think you know what you're doing because you base your decisions and your experience and your perspective on what you know thus far. So to you at that point, that is the kind of the right way to operate, or that's the right way to be and whatever. And actually, I think when you grow up and you look back, you're like, well, I understand why I thought that or I did that or behaved that way. But actually, realistically, I don't think that was maybe the best way of doing things or the way to actually handle things. That I wouldn't handle things in the same way now. A lot of that's age, a lot of that's experience, but I think it's actually, I hope that my letters to myself will help listeners perhaps think about things they've learned since growing up and also things maybe they could learn and want to change currently. Because I try and think, like, at my 27th birthday, every birthday I try and think about what I want to try and focus on or do differently in the year going forward. And this year for me, it was trying to be less explosively reactive in situations. Sometimes I can get very passionate about things very quickly or get annoyed about things that I believe in and kind of like really go for it. But I've been trying to be calmer about things and actually just take a beat and be like, okay, wait a second, like, fine, that's how you feel, you know how you feel, that's what you think, entitled to and probably valid, but is this the right way to handle it or express that, and is this the right time to do it? And just kind of thinking things through in a different kind of way. And that's been really, for me at least, has been really beneficial, and has just helped me kind of prevent myself from getting one step ahead before I actually kind of think about what I'm doing. And sometimes I regret that I handle things a certain way or said things a certain way, because I'm a very direct person. I say what I think, and I don't like to be fake or pretend or deliver things in a way that kind of like buttered up and like not as honest as I would say them. But I can see how that can also affect people who aren't necessarily as direct or like need things delivered in a certain way or kind of take things personally. So that's what I've been working on. So actually this letter's a good one, because actually there's things that I've learned about myself since growing up that I definitely haven't sat down properly and thought about. So number 1 would be, and this is not in order of importance, this is just the first one I thought of, don't take things so seriously. And I think that's a great one, because as a kid, you kind of like, everything is like the end of the world, you know, like your parents have a go at you and you're like, I'm gonna like move out, I'm gonna run away from home, or I'm look www.howtogetadopted.com and like taking things so seriously. Like, I can't believe my mum didn't let me go to this thing. And obviously sometimes parents are wrong, and don't get me wrong, parents get it wrong a lot, like no one's perfect. But you know, as a kid, I remember like when my parents get annoyed at me, I'd get annoyed, like, how can they be annoyed at me? Like, they don't even understand, like they think they know what they don't know. And things seem so dramatic, or like if you have a fight with a friend, you're like crying for days or so upset or emotional, like wondering if you're ever gonna have friends again, or what did I do to deserve this, and blah blah blah. And actually it's like we're very emotional as kids, and I'm sure puberty plays a role in that and how you kind of handle and process things. But I remember just thinking as a kid that like I took everything so seriously, and I get so in my head and so worked up, and it's partially still in me now as someone who ruminates a lot and likes to really think things through, and I would just get into a point where I'd be like constantly thinking like, oh my god, what about this and what about that? And yeah, I just think as a kid nothing is that serious or that disastrously important that you have to kind of pour your whole life into. I remember some friends that I fell out with, and it really would devastate me, and I'd kind of think a lot about what that meant about me as a person. Why did this person not like me? Was that because I was someone who had a flaw, or I wasn't cool enough, or wasn't good enough, or I always thought it was to do with a fault in myself. Or if I got in trouble at school, or I didn't get the grade I wanted, or I didn't feel super popular, I didn't feel like people liked me, that would really get to me. And I remember I was very insular as a kid. I didn't really share much about how I was feeling or what I thought for a long time, up until kind of maybe like the last 3 or 4 years. I've got better at sharing with my friends and talking about how I'm feeling, talking about my day and that kind of thing. But as a kid, I was very instant. I'd get home and I'd get back from school and I'd just sit on the floor and think and be like, okay, well, this person said this today, so that probably means this, and like that must mean they think this about me, and I've got to make sure that they don't. And like, these guys at school, this group of guys at school don't like me, and they say it's because of this and that, and like that means that's bad, so I should probably change how I would really take everything to heart, and I'd be worried about, like if I don't pass this exam, then I'm not going to get into uni, and I'm going to be like not get a good job, I'm going to disappoint my parents and like have no money, and like everything was so serious to me as a kid. And the reason I say this one, I think, is really important if you're listening and you are like younger than I am. It's very emotionally draining to use that much energy all the time working yourself up, and it makes you kind of see things generally from a catastrophic view, and you always think that things are going to go wrong, and things always work themselves out. And that actually funnily segues onto the next point that I make, which is that number 2, things do work out. But before I get to that, and I just looking back at myself now, I just think there are so many things as a child that I allowed myself to get stressed about or worked up about. Or I remember I fell out with like 2 of my best friends at, like in year 10 because and this is the stupidest fight of all time, and I won't even go into details just in case one day it comes back to bite me in the back. But we fell out with something stupid about a comment someone made on Facebook that was misinterpreted, but they just stopped talking to me. And they were the group, it sounds like I'm crying, I'm not crying by the way, and they were the group that I used to go to lunch with every day, so I had no one to go to lunch with. So I ended up like having to kind of like find a new friendship group and try and repurpose myself. And that was really actually I'd say heartbreaking for me, because I felt like, well, if there's a group of 3 of us and 2 of them can turn their back on me, then like I'm obviously not valued, I'm not important. It really was really stressful for me. And I ended up finding like better friends who I'm still friends with now. One of them is getting married, I'm going to the wedding, so it works out. But I think when you take things so seriously all the time and get yourself beaten up and into a dark place, you can actually end up like not enjoying life. And that's why it's like, if you worry about everything all the time, you miss the good moments. You are too busy being stressed and worried, and you end up not being able to enjoy the beauty of life overall, where things are typically good and there are things to be happy about. And it's never going to be the end of the world. You're still a child, you're still young, you're still whatever age I am, whatever age you are as I'm writing this letter, but nothing's that serious as a kid. Like even exams, even grades, like if you get bad grades at GCSE, you can still get good A-levels. Even if you fail your A-levels, you can retake them and you can apply to uni multiple times. And even if you flop your uni degree, like don't take anything so seriously, because there's always a way to deal with it or fix it. You just have to kind of figure it out. So that's number 1. Number 2, things always work out. And I've come to, and this maybe is partially because of the way I live my life quite chaotically, that I end up in situations where things are pretty stressful and intense all the time. But I've come to learn, realize, and respect that things will always work themselves out. You just have to give it time and have faith that that's going to happen. So again, the scenario I was saying about not having friends, for the first few weeks it was kind of awkward, not having friends to go to lunch with. It's kind of awkward, and I would tag along with this group and like maybe eat lunch by myself. And then eventually I just kind of said to these guys, oh hey, do you guys mind if I come to lunch with you, like going forward? They're like, yeah, cool, whatever, like, we meet here at this time, we try and get out of a lesson, and we all kind of meet at the outside our form, and then we walk over to the canteen. And they took me in, and it's like, now looking back, the people I became friends with after I fell out, my previous friends, were a better match to who I was. And so actually that situation at the time was super painful, but it worked out for the best. And there are like even more examples, I think now. Like I remember applying to unis, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I was stressing about my career, my future, and if I choose being a lawyer, or like I choose that, or I choose not being a doctor, then I can't go back, because once I've done my A-levels, I've done my A-levels, so I can never change. And I just remember being like worried that if I made a bad decision, then it would kind of again be catastrophic. But then it worked out, because I ended up, going to Bristol, which I loved, and like law was intense, but I did a law degree and ended up then switching to finance, and it wasn't necessarily a pathway that I planned on, but I got a great job and I'm happy with my job, and I'm there now. And so it's kind of like you can sit and stress about things for ages and really worry about what's going to happen, but things work out. And of course, this is in no way me saying that it's not good to take stock of how you're feeling and be worried or be concerned about things, but realistically, more times than not, and obviously there are certain things that happen that don't work out. But as a kid, as the letter I'm writing to my younger self, I would like you to realize or see the pattern or be cognizant of the fact that actually situations where things go wrong typically work out. And then again, even I think like now as an adult, sometimes there are situations where I'm falling out with a friend or disagreeing about something with a friend, and it's really annoying and really tense, and we end up maybe getting an impasse, we don't speak for a while. But most of my close friendships, in fact all of my close friendships where we've had issues or not been friends or not spoken for a time period, I'm getting better now at like not overhyping myself and kind of being like, where's this going to end up? Like, what does this mean, or what's going to happen in the future? Because what's the saying? Que sera, sera. Like, what will be, will be. Like, it will work itself out if it's supposed to. If you're supposed to stay friends with that person and you really love them and you really want things to work out, then, if it's meant to be, it might be in a month's time, it might be in a year's time, it might be in 2 days' time. You might cross paths again. You might end up becoming friends with someone else they're friends with and meeting again. You might just decide that you want to drop them the fight and message them and say, hey, like, let's just talk this out, or they might do the same. But sometimes it's good to just let things go, like let things be and just let them work themselves out. And I found even with like now, like with my flat and stuff and trying to figure stuff out, like getting builders and buying stuff. And I remember when I was doing flat viewings, I couldn't find one that I liked, and I couldn't find the area that I liked, and it was like up and down. I found another flat, actually, made an offer, instructed a lawyer, started paying the fees, went to go and visit the flat, spoke to a few neighbours again, and one guy was actually super honest and was like, yeah, I've lived here for 5 years, but I rent. My flat floods all the time when it rains because it's ground floor. What floor is your flat? The flat I put an offer on was ground floor. He said, this used to be a property that I think back in the 90s where some drug addicts had a problem on the roof, and sometimes people still break in on the roof and then they go up there and do like meth or whatever. And I was like, okay. And he was like, oh yeah, and then behind the building, it's the alleyway that leads to the restaurant, so all the builders are out there late at night smoking when they finish their shifts at like 11, 12, sometimes 1. They drink out there, they sing out there. I was like, fine. Bikes get stolen out there. The list just went on and on. So I pulled out from the flat, and that was really upsetting. I was like, well, this is kind of unbelievable. I found someone that I really liked, and then I have to then pull out. Like, who does that happen to, that they find out that actually the place they're about to buy has like crackheads like inhabiting the roof? But then I kept searching, I just kept going, kept my head up, and then 2 weeks later I found the flat I live in now, and it was the best flat I'd seen out of all the like 20, 30 flats I'd viewed. Best location, 2 bedrooms, and it just was like it just worked out for me. And that was when I kind of was like, wow, it's interesting, because like 2 weeks ago, if you told me that this would happen, I would have not believed it. I was so stressed and so on edge and so annoyed and so like just pissed off that I was in the situation I was in. And I would never have guessed that it would all resolve itself in 2 weeks. But sometimes it's like having that confidence or comfortability in, or that belief and trust that things will work out as they need to be. And even sometimes I think with work things, you might get a project and be like, how the hell am I going to do this, or how am I going to make this week work, or how am I going to get this deadline out? But things typically resolve themselves in a natural way, and life is very cyclical. I think sometimes you go through phases of like things. Oh, dropped my phone. Sometimes you go through phases of life where things just are fine and work out perfectly, and there's not an issue. And sometimes you have issues, and then you're in the cycle of issues. You forget that actually before the cycle of things not being so great, I was in a good patch and a good period, and like things kind of do cycle through, and like you might have a lot going on, it's annoying and stressful, and then it ends up being fun and it works out again. But you just have to remind yourself that that is kind of the pattern and cycle of life. So I think, yeah, it's that's one thing I always try and I can't find my wallet currently, and I need to find it, but I'm just trying to not stress, because like either I find it and it's here, or I've lost it, and I think it might be work, but either I've lost it or I haven't lost it. Either way, I'm going to have to deal with that at some point. But I've just been looking around as I can. I've been searching stuff and then like asked a few friends. But it will work itself out. It's going to be somewhere. This happens to me all the time I lose my wallet. But what I don't want to do is like let my overthinking and worrying nature mean that I then am on edge for days because I can't find my wallet and I'm freaking out. Like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And I did this before when I lost my wallet a few months ago. I think I mentioned this on the podcast. When I lost my wallet and I was freaking out. And it's just not worth the energy you lose from stressing about it all the time. I'd rather just be calm about it and just kind of keep a level head, and then that will help me get through the situation in the best way possible. Number 3 is a slightly deeper one, and it's don't be afraid to take risks in pursuing your dreams. And at 27, as I look back at myself and my passions and hobbies and interests I had as a kid, I knew very clearly I loved art. I loved acting. I loved like performing. I loved music. I loved writing music. I loved playing the guitar, the keyboard. I loved being creative. And I think I reached an age where, so essentially when I was in between the first and second year of uni, I went to an agency to try and get like picked up for acting, and the guy said to me, "You will only play drug dealers, a schoolboy, or a gangster." And this was not him being like, well, it wasn't appropriate, but it was not him being mean. He was just saying like, those are the roles we see for black guys. That's what you're going to get cast for. And I said, okay, fine, yeah, whatever, cool. I'll make it work. But when I got home, I remember thinking like, wow, there's not space for me in the creative world to be the kind of creative person I want to be. And then I remember that was the point where I started being more practical about what I wanted to do and what my dreams were. And my dreams and like ambitions and goals became marred with like logic and practicality and calculation of risks and reward. And I think I wish I could go back to myself when I was 12 and say to myself, like, keep playing the guitar and keep practicing and keep singing and keep acting and don't be shy. I think I was always, and I did a lot of, musical theatre and drama and stuff at school, but I was always kind of scared to say that's what I wanted to do fully. Like, I wanted to be an actor. I would say I like acting, and I kind of never really actually allowed myself to fully admit that's what I wanted to do. And I have friends who did that at different stages of their lives, and most of them it's worked out for them and they've had varying degrees of success. And I wish I had kept the conviction I had in my heart and not become become like an adult, really. I'd lost my childhood innocence essentially, and just kept that same level of dedication, desire and passion. I remember dreaming as a kid, like, I can't wait to like be on stage and perform for them, this many people, and do this and do that and whatever, because I just loved doing it. I loved doing theatre at school, I loved acting, I loved singing, I loved doing all that stuff. And it kind of, when I got to uni and I was out of the school bubble where I'd been in the drama, like in the drama club, drama kind of like circle for years. So I did like 2 or 3 plays a year, and I had my friends, and I knew the teachers, and I like was involved. Oh, there's my timer for my chicken. I was involved in all of that kind of stuff. And then when I got to uni, it became more like serious, because I was studying for a degree for my career, and everything felt more ancillary, like the other passions I had, and I was super stressed and worried about doing that. And I kind of like told myself I had to drop that and not be distracted, and I kind of let that go for a few years and didn't really act at all. I didn't act at all at uni. I was too scared to join the acting club, because I went there one day to see them all like rehearsing for something, and I was like, oh my God, these guys are like so dedicated, that they're so good, and they know this is what they want to do, and they're clear that they want to be actors and they're at uni, but actually acting is their passion. And I was too scared to ever allow myself to truly like accept or admit or claim that that's what I wanted, and I was scared to pursue those dreams fully. And so I was like, well, I can't compare to these guys because I'm just not like on that level. I don't have the same energy. And so I just pulled out and drew away. And I stopped playing keyboard. Like I'd play every now and then with my friend Harry. We go to the studio, like the uni studio, and play and like write and jam or whatever. But I never really did anything fully, right? I never just sat down and said, okay, well, I'm gonna keep acting or I'm gonna keep auditioning for stuff. And I kind of lost like a year or two in that. Luckily, then I kind of came across some friends that kind of pulled me into creative endeavors, and I've done a few things since. But one thing I lost was, that's kind of been dulled, is that same conviction and passion and desperation to do those things that I know I loved. And so I'd say to my younger self, don't let the world dull your passion and your dreams. There's nothing wrong with taking a risk, and there's also nothing wrong with failing. And that kind of ties into it as well. I think my fear of like doing things and not, as being a Nigerian firstborn male in the UK, and being black, right, and having to kind of being raised saying you have to do things at a high standard because people are going to judge you at a high standard because you're of color and you're whatever, you kind of learn that all that we can accept is A star is the best. And so with creativity, it's kind of like, okay, well, say you want to act, you audition, you keep failing, like that's failure, and failure is not good. Or you want to, make music and you're putting music out and people don't like it and it doesn't go anywhere, and you've embarrassed yourself by opening up yourself and exposing yourself to the world and letting them know what you want to do, and then you failed and it's embarrassing. And I think I deal a lot with like what people are going to think, and that's my next point. It doesn't matter what people think about you. That's number 4. But a lot of fear and worry about failure and how that would make me look to other people. So yeah, number 3, don't be afraid to pursue your dreams and take risks. It's worth it. And I'm kind of like now in this new, like, I've gone through like a metamorphosis this like last week where I'm like, actually I feel like that burn and that fire and that passion, that kind of like motivation again, like to really just go for it and try and do the things I love doing without fear. So if you're reading this letter, if you can avoid losing the shine and the energy and the passion, good. But if you do, you'll find it again when you're 27. Number 4, it doesn't matter what people think about you. This is I think everyone probably struggles with this to a degree, and I don't think I necessarily struggle with it more than the average child, teenager, young adult, but I think it's something that I still am working through now, and I think a lot of my friends are, and we all kind of need to as a society. But as a kid, you want to fit in and be cool, and you want people to like you, and you want people to respect you, and you want to not be the odd one out. And I remember being bullied as a kid because I was black and I was like into arts and I was not the most macho guy in school, and I was outspoken, I was confrontational, I was smart, and so I was already on on the back foot, and there were already a lot of things that meant I was kind of like aware that made me different to other people. And so I didn't want anything else to I don't want to give people a reason to have a go at me or to not like me. And so when people didn't like me at school, or even up until a few years ago, when people didn't like me or treat me differently, it would really rattle me. I'd be like, oh my God, like what is wrong with me? Like I must be a weirdo or a freak, or like they're friends with this guy but not me, so it must be me. Like there's something, maybe I'm a weirdo, or like maybe I'm ugly, or I'm odd, or I'm like not funny enough, or I'm not cool. And I'd really try and understand how I could mold myself to be liked by that person. And that is unhealthy generally, to try and change yourself to please someone else, because you never know what's going to happen with that person. They could vanish or stop being friends with you. But also for your own sense of self, it's very damaging to not have a strong sense of self and try to adapt. And that's one thing I think I have, that I class it as a skill, but also it can be a curse, is that I'd say I'm quite a chameleon, that I can blend in different scenarios with different people and different groups and bring out different traits of myself as necessary to just thrive in that scenario. But adapting and changing who I think are different things, or showing different versions of yourself versus like putting on a persona or personality of different things. And I think as I got to sixth form, I kind of went through this kind of like state of rage, because I realized I'd been kind of trying to appease people at a school that was full of a lot of racists and problematic people, and just people that just didn't, like any school, there were problems, right? And I'd been trying to keep everyone happy and be friends with everyone and like make sure people liked me. And I realized actually a lot of these people were never going to like me, and I didn't need them to like me, and I just needed to be myself and talk about what mattered to me and stand my ground and be the best version of myself. And I disagreed with something, I was entitled to say that, and if that meant someone wasn't going to like me, then that was their problem. And so, and a lot of that came from me starting to speak about race and the way we were treated at school as black people, and just race in the world, and like challenging like certain like closed or backwards mindsets that people had, and just really not standing for it. And people obviously don't like being called out, so that kind of didn't go too well. And yeah, I just, it was interesting, but I stopped caring at probably like the last year of sixth form what people thought about me, as long as I felt like what I was standing for, what I was saying, or what I was doing was, I believed that was the right thing to do, then I became confident in that. And again, it kind of changed a bit at uni, where you're in a new scenario, you don't know people. And I mean, I went to Bristol Uni, and Bristol Uni was basically all white private school kids from London or like other rich out like county parts of the country. And I was like a black boy that went to an all white school in Essex, but different kind of white people. And it was actually really weird because I just didn't understand the culture. I hadn't skied. I didn't have a signet ring. I didn't have parents who did XYZ or like were CEOs. I hadn't been like to all these, like I hadn't been to Nairobi and Kenya, and I hadn't been whatever. And it was just very weird. And so I had to kind of be like, oh my God, like, even though I know who I am, like I know that I'm going to be the odd one out here. So I was really like desperate to try and be a version of myself that would appease these people and make them be interested in being friends with me. And I think at times I was kind of performative and would like show interest in certain things or speak a certain way or kind of react a certain way, or if I disagree with something, not say anything, just not to rock the boat. Say, oh yeah, that's fine, I think that's fine, even though I know I didn't agree with it because I cared what people thought. And of course that's natural to a degree, because when you are in a new scenario or you meet people, you want to kind of find commonality so you can relate. But I don't think it should drive your existence in a way. And another kind of way I view this, it doesn't matter what people think about you, is in terms of your outward perception. I've spoken to my friends about this a lot recently. There's this thing with, maybe it's a social media thing, because obviously people, you have to share things as you're doing them, and as you kind of build your following as you're doing them, and your friends follow you on those pages, so they see your attempts or endeavors, or hobbies or interests. Whereas maybe before, like, that wasn't the case. You kind of just, you hustled and you had to grind in the background, and you either got signed or had a deal, or like you were doing well. But I think there's this big thing on social media about like being embarrassed to say that you like things or that you want to attempt to do something. This kind of like, oh, but what if I say I want to do it and people like think I'm a weird, or I don't think I'm gonna be good at it, or they judge me for it, or they think I'm like getting too big for my boots, or they don't like it, or what if I fail, or what if I don't achieve it, and like it's embarrassing me being beggy and like posting like reels and doing that. And I remember I posted my story a few months ago. I was like, so I came to the realization, I was like, the reason I've never really, I guess, gone as like as hard or as like completely at this kind of creative side to myself, so I think I was embarrassed to be the kid that was trying to be a content creator. I found that like people were, oh cool, whatever, but no one ever had a negative reaction to it. It was in my head that I just felt I looked like a loser. Oh, like, well, please watch my YouTube channel. Oh, I'm doing this like lockdown diaries thing. Oh, like, please listen to my podcast. I felt like a beg, and I am someone who hates like asking for things or like needing stuff from other people in that kind of way. And so like with content stuff, you kind of have to ask people to follow you, and ask people to share, and ask people to comment, and ask people to engage with your content. You need support from people. And so I used to just hate like posting like, oh, I did this, like, oh, here's me trying to be funny on a reel that I filmed on my own in my house, like last night, edited all day today, like I want attention, I want likes. But or like I'm making this video that I spent like 4 hours editing, and I posted it online, and I only got 10 likes, or 10 views even, like that's annoying. And I was embarrassed that, you know, things weren't going well, and I wasn't Nella Rose, I wasn't KSI. But there's nothing embarrassing about attempting things. And I think it's funny because I know that when I look at my friends or other people that I follow that are attempting things or starting new projects or going down new avenues or whatever, I'm like, good for you. I'll share it on my story. I'll comment and say, great, I'll listen to the podcast. I'll do whatever. And I don't in any way ever kind of think negatively about it. But I have this, and maybe it's a negative voice thing. I have this feeling that when I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, people are probably looking at me thinking, oh God, here he goes again. But that isn't the case. And I'm still coming to terms with it now. But as I'm writing this letter to my younger self, I'm still working through it. But I want to kind of say this in a letter to help my younger self start on the journey earlier of not caring. And it doesn't really matter, I think. And everyone that I do talk to when I see them, they're like, oh, I love that you're starting a new podcast. I loved your last podcast, and I don't even have ADHD or OCD, but I just listened because I thought it was great and I wanted to support you. Or I love that you're doing these reels. Or I watch your YouTube videos still, or whatever. And I think they're good. And it's like, no one's ever been like, oh my God, it's a bit beggy, mate. Like, I would stop doing that if I was you. But like, my whole thing is that I think people are going to think badly about me. But also, even if they do, who the heck cares? It doesn't matter. People come and go. Some friendships last, some don't. Some relationships last, some don't. Like, these things are very fickle in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about yourself, your life, your career, your hobby, your passion. And I think it's a lesson that we could all do well to actually pick up on and learn from earlier and as soon as possible, because that's what I think holds a lot of people back, is the fear of failure and then the fear of negative perception generally. And yeah, it's not healthy. So yeah, focus on yourself, do what you want to do, and the rest will come and follow as it should. And if people don't support you, or people are negative, or they say whatever, do you really want those people in your life? Are those people you really want to be friends with, or people you want to be hanging out with? No. So actually, it's probably for the best that you can identify the fake friends or the unsupportive friends, or the people that you don't need to put as much time into in that way, or that are also identify the friends that are just not friends that are going to listen to your content or engage with your content. And that's fine, because your content's not going to be for everyone. But figuring out, where people stand is fine. But no one's ever going to be like, oh my God, I blocked you and unfollowed you because I just think it's so embarrassing that you're trying to do something that you enjoy. It's not going to happen. So don't let life get you down. 5 is, and it's one, again, that I've learned recently, and as I talk about it with my friends, I'm actually like, yeah, it's so true. Open up more. That's my advice to myself. I was always the friend that, I spoke about this last week when I spoke about boundaries in the episode, but I was always the friend that would be the therapist for my friends and be on calls for hours and hear them crying and be like, no, it's okay, and supporting them and like talking through things for hours and days and weeks. And then people would be like, how are you? And I'd be like, yeah, I'm actually good. Like, well, what's going on with you? Nothing really. Like, literally just been working and seeing friends. And that was honestly always my default answer. My default or default? Default answer, I'm going to say. I would just say that. And I genuinely believed it. And no one ever challenged me on it, because it's like, well, they're like, why would this guy lie if he's got nothing to say? Like, what am I going to do? Like, put a gun to his head and force him to speak and say what's on his mind? Like, obviously not. So people would just not say anything. And then eventually, like, when I went through therapy, my therapist was like, what do you talk about with your friends? I'm like, the blah, 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 and the blah, blah, and they're like, so you talk about them? I was like, no, I talk about me. And she was like, okay, well, what did you talk about with you? And I was like, I told them that I went out on the weekend. She's like, but you don't share emotionally and vulnerably, and you don't let people feel like they're supporting you, or you make people feel like they don't need, you don't need them to support you. And so then they stop doing that to you in that way. And then you feel left out and like you're not getting enough, but actually maybe you're playing a part in setting up a dynamic in a relationship or a friendship where you present as if you don't need or want certain things, so people stop trying to give them to you because you don't need them, or you don't give them a chance to give those things to you. And one of my best friends, Gray, was saying how like we've become so much closer in the last like 3 or so years because I've just started being more open with them and talking about when I'm having a bad day at work. And that's the thing, it's like, it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I'm going to die, I can't go on. It's like, sometimes just being honest, it's like, oh yeah, I'm good actually, but I had a bit of a crappy week, like this happened, it just really pissed me off, and it's small and it's mundane, but it's not that you're burdening your friend by sharing that. It's just, that's the kind of the discourse and the components that make up a friendship, is like talking and sharing things, and like, oh, like, you never believe what I read today, blah, 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 and just talking about that, or like, oh, I had a fight with my mom, or like, this person pissed me off, but like, you have to share, it has to be a two-way street, and I think balance is always important, and I just never felt like, I always felt like I didn't need to. I felt like, you know what, I could ask this person or tell this person a story, but I don't really need to, because I know what I'm going to do, and I thought through it. This comes back to the point number 1 about me overthinking things. I've thought through it, for hours and days, and I know that this is the best outcome. I'm very much kind of a person when it comes to decisions or situations. I'll just think about it until I bottom out every single possible route or outcome and weigh up the facts and pros and cons, then be like, okay, the best thing to do is probably this, and then I just do it. So I'm always like, I don't think I need to speak to someone else to get that, because I know what I'm going to end up doing and I know how I feel about it. But then you get surprised when you do start talking to people and sharing your experience and asking questions and blah, 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 that actually sometimes you get perspectives from people that you didn't even expect. Like, you tell someone that you're just telling on the off chance because you're having a conversation, they share a really insightful piece of information or a really useful perspective on something that you wouldn't even have thought of, because diversity of thought is always better. And the more I started doing that with friends, I was like, sometimes it's even not that you want the advice or the help, it's just that it's good to talk and get it off your chest and share how you're feeling. And just have someone listen and be like, yeah, that is really crappy. You had a really bad week, or that's really annoying, or, oh, have you thought about doing this? Or like, you should do this. And like, it's good to open up with people and let people in and give people a chance to see that you also are human. And there's nothing wrong with like having problems or talking about them or wanting help or wanting support. Like, it's good that you're aware of what your problems are and what you're going through, but not talking about it with anyone is also not the way to go about it. And so, yeah, it's one that I like now. I think I'm definitely in a much better place. I would just text people and be like, oh my God, I'm having the worst day ever. I'm literally in such a bad mood. And they're like, oh my God, no, what's going on? Like, we should talk about it. And then it's just nice knowing that someone's aware that you're having a bad day, and someone's going to check in on you and ask you how your day was, or like what happened in the end with that situation with your manager or whatever, like whatever's going on, right? Or that situation with your friend, or you're like the person you're seeing, or like that neighbor was being annoying, like whatever happened, that thing that was on your mind, you have someone to share it with, and someone that's going to kind of ask you how it's going down the line. It's just good to have that kind of support, and there's nothing wrong in opening up and needing that. So I think, yeah, that's number 5. I think just open up more, and you'll be positively surprised at what comes from it. Okay, cool. So Timi's takes. I watched the video this week. I saw it on TikTok, and I actually ended up watching the full video with my mum, and you can find it on YouTube if you search what I'm about to say. It's Elizabeth Gilbert talking about distinguishing between hobbies, jobs, career, and vacation. And I was just scrolling. I don't normally like these like motivational videos with like, okay, let me talk to you guys and tell you about this. So you stay with me. 1, you got to do this. 2, you will always learn this. 3, but it captivated me straight away when I was watching, because she just has great delivery. And the video, basically, she talks about the difference between those 4 things I said: hobbies, jobs, careers, vacation. And it's really interesting because I never really thought about the difference between them, or that there really was that great difference between them. But I learned a lot from this video. And so Elizabeth basically says that a hobby is something you do purely for pleasure, with no desire or need for reward, return, or like compensation. You just do it because you love doing it, and you have no desire for it to become like your life, or like your job, or your passion, or you're not planning it to go anywhere, or like for you to get better at it and evolve and then be able to do XYZ. You just do that thing because you like doing that thing. For example, you might just be gardening because you like gardening, or roller skating, or knitting, or crocheting, whatever. That's hobby. Job is something you have that is a means to an end. It provides you money to pay for the things you have to pay for: bills, phone, electricity. I nearly said gas then, but yeah, petrol. All those things that, you have these outgoings that you have to deal with each month, and the job is the means to get that. And it's a contract, an agreed exchange, that I give you this service, you give me money, and I go home. That's the kind of situation. And job doesn't have to be something that you love. It can just be something that you're literally doing for that purpose. Like, I want to be a singer, but I haven't made it yet, so I work shifts at my local restaurant so I can pay my bills and I can afford to eat and go out and see my friends and have fun. A career is like your long-term plan for, or the trajectory you're on within your job, or, what you want, I guess, not always within your job, but I guess what your long-term trajectory is and where it looks like your progression is going. And one thing she said was, if you hate your career, then you should get out and start again, because if you're working hard and engaging in something and progressing and kind of getting promotions in the career path that you don't want to be in, then you're wasting your time. And then the final one was vacation. And this is one we probably all know, but don't use the word vacation that often. Vacation is something that it's your calling, it's your purpose, it's something you love to do, and it's your purpose in life. It's that's the thing you're going to do. And this is interesting, right, coming from from what I just said about my letter to myself. And I think it was number 3 or 4 where I said, don't be afraid to pursue your dreams and take risks. And like, that's the thing. I think with my vocation, I've always known what that was and what I love doing, but I didn't always allow myself to acknowledge that, or I kind of dulled it down and silenced it a bit because it was scary to actually accept that and do it. But hey ho, 27 years, I'm still young. I've got time to go. But I thought it was cool to actually like. I was talking to my mum about this, and I was like, "Do you have hobbies?" And she was like, "Well, yeah, of course I do this and I do that." I was like, "Those aren't hobbies, mum." Like, watching TV is not really a hobby. It's just like you're chilling. But my mum was like, "Yeah, actually, I think, and a lot of my dad's the same, and I'm sure a lot of Nigerian parents are the same. They just work and get stuff done and don't really take time to relax because it's always kind of like, what purpose is this serving? I'm doing this so I can like keep things going and be a good parent and be a good, and support my family and whatever. Be a good husband or wife." And it's good to have things to do that you just like doing for the sake of doing them. And I was even thinking myself, like, what hobbies do I actually engage in? I don't go to the gym a lot, and that isn't really a hobby. That's more like I could say that's more like a job for me. Like, it's something I have to do. And it's an exchange between me and the gym. The contract is I go to the gym. If I go to the gym consistently, I will get a better body. Fine. I bought roller skates. I really want to roller skate. I just haven't had the time. But that was a potential hobby. And again, I said to my mum, like, watching Netflix and watching TV is not a hobby. It's just a pastime. But I don't have anything I do just for the sake of doing it for return, and that's why I'm trying to now work on building into my week time to experiment with hobbies or actually just pick up roller skating again. It's getting dark now in the UK. It's like it's pitch black outside now, and it's just gone 7. So I'm not sure, but I'm gonna try and hopefully find time to build that in. Obviously, I have a job, I have a career, and I know my vacation. But I would encourage you, listeners, to sit down if you haven't already, or if you don't know what they are, and ask yourself: do I have these 4 things, and am I clear on what they are? What's my hobby? Do I have a hobby? If not, can I find one? You obviously know your job. Have I figured out what my career is, what my career plan is, and then what's my vocation? What's my purpose? Because it's like since I've watched the video, like actually taking time to kind of break down all 4 of these and kind of figure out what I can put in each box, and it's actually quite affirming to do that, and also like can make you think, okay, well actually, like, I'm saying this is my vocation, but actually my job and career are completely separate. I'm not even really doing anything to maintain that connection to that vocation. Let's fix it. Let's talk about it. Let's think about it. So yeah, I thought it was a great video. Elizabeth Gilbert on YouTube, distinguishing between hobbies, jobs, careers, and vacations. Give it a watch. That's my take this week. That's what I'm thinking about. And my other take is, actually, no, I was just going to talk about Kanye West, but maybe I'll do that next week. All the ties that he's been cut with. But I think that's kind of a follow on from what I said in one of my previous Timi takes, where Kanye West is now suffering the repercussions of all of his inappropriate behavior, and actually is. I've heard he's lost like 80% of his net worth and has gone from like X billion to now like I think 400k, which is crazy. But there are repercussions when you say things about people, and you disparage people, and you insult people, and you offend people repeatedly. Like at some point, you will suffer. And I think he just took it too far, and anti-Semitism is not cool, and I think he got what he deserved. So that's my quick take on that. But other than that, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Black Eye the Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next week. Goodbye.